Picture this. You are on vacation. As you are sitting on the beach, sipping kava, watching the sunset, you see a man swimming in the water. You think nothing of it, but as you watch closer, the person is moving like a seal and is far quicker than any person you've seen swim. Then, the thing springs out of the water, the backlight of the sun illuminating the beast. It is a fish-human hybrid, known commonly as a mermaid. Or you can get a closer look. The sun sets, the creature never being seen again. Hula! I know the intro was a little cinematic, but I wanted to do something special for the warm seasons coming up. Talking about a topic that I think is really interesting, the Fiji Mermaid. The Fiji Mermaid is one of the most famous cases of a hoax, and you can even say one of the pioneers in cryptozoology. I don't really have anything else to say for an intro, so let's get right into it. Before we talk about the origin of the mermaid, I'll give a little description on what it looked like. The mermaid was around 3 feet long, having the upper body of some type of ape and the lower body of a fish. Some speculation says they had the head of a baboon, body of an orangutan, and the tail of a salmon. Some thinking it was a combination of an orangutan and shark, but we don't know for sure. The mermaid is described as an ugly, dried-up, black-looking, diminutive specimen by P.T. Barnum, who we will be talking about later on. The spine of the creature was in a perfect, unbroken line to the head, while the hair of the mermaid was 7 inches down into the shoulder of the fish. Miniature scales were even intertwined in the hair of the ape's body. The creature's mouth was open, its tail turned over, and arms thrown up in the air, appearing that it died in great agony. The craftsmanship of the mermaid was so perfect, it was hard to tell with the naked eye that it was fake. Now that we have the rundown, where did it come from? The mermaid was not actually from Fiji. P.T. Barnum gave it that name. From our knowledge, the mermaid was made somewhere in Japan during the 1810s. We don't know what the purpose of the mermaid was. The two main theories being that it was made for some type of religious purpose or was made for profit. The mermaid was then sold to a sea captain. When the captain died, his son inherited the mermaid. The son then sold it to Moses Kimball, who then leased it to P.T. Barnum. Moses Kimball was a 19th century showman and museum curator, being a close rival and friend with the mentioned P.T. Barnum. Kimball, like Barnum, is most famous for his showmanship and his museum, the Boston Museum. Kimball was born in Ipswich, Massachusetts, on October 24, 1809, later moving to Rockport. At the age of 15, Kimball moved to Boston. This is where he would create his empire. Kimball's first business venture was the founding of the New England Printing Company in 1836, but soon collapsed in 1837. In the following year of 1838, Kimball purchased collections from the New England Museum, dividing the items between his new Lowell Museum in 1840 and Boston Museum in 1841. The Boston Museum is where Kimball displayed exotic animals, wax figures, taxidermies, sculptures, paintings, and anything else that would catch the eye. One of these was the infamous mermaid. In 1842, Kimball traveled to New York to meet with P.T. Barnum to lease the mermaid to him. P.T. Barnum is the most well-known and widely regarded as the greatest showman of all time. Most known for his circus in collaboration with James Anthony Bailey, his American Museum in New York, and the many hoaxes that he manufactured. Barnum was born July 5, 1810, in Bethel, Connecticut. His early life was calm up until his father passed away at the age of 15. This required Barnum to hold down a large array of jobs. Eventually, Barnum became a publisher for Danbury, Connecticut weekly newspaper, Herald of Freedom. As a writer, Barnum was arrested 3 times for defamation. In 1834, Barnum left for New York City, where he would display his showmanship in a pretty unethical way. 1 year after moving to the city, Barnum would present a blind slave woman who he claimed was 161 years old, named Joyce Heath, claiming that she was the former nurse of George Washington. In reality, she was only 80 years old. This was met with great backlash, but this story is for another time. Nevertheless, Barnum in 1841 purchased Scudder's American Museum, which he renamed to Barnum's American Museum. The building was 5 stories, filled with oddities. This is where Barnum would promote exotic curiosities, much like Kimball. The Mermaid could have taken a few paths to get to Kimball and Barnum. The first way is thought by P.T. Barnum in his autobiography. He cites an article from the time, an article named Manners and Customs of the Japanese in the 19th Century, from the accounts of recent Dutch residents in Japan, and from the German work of Dr. von Siebold. I know, a tongue twister, states a story of a Japanese fisherman who connected the upper half of a monkey to the bottom half of a fish. He returned to his village, stating that he had caught the mermaid alive, which died a few moments later. The article states that the mermaid spoke before it died, stating that there will be only a few years left of fertility, followed by an epidemic. The fisherman made great profit from towing around the mermaid, causing other mermaids to be made and sold. Barnum stating that he bought one in a Peel collection in Philadelphia, and that there's one on the shelf at the Royal Museum of Indian Antiques at The Hague, purchased from an American sea captain. One of these mermaids was sold to the Dutch, which was then transported to Batavia, which is now modern-day Jakarta. This is where an American sailor would come into possession of it. He would then show it all around Europe during the years 1822 to 23. The second story is told by the fisherman's son, who sold the mermaid to Kimball. The sailor says that his father bought the mermaid from a Japanese fisherman in Calcutta in 1817. The last story is told by Jan Bonderson in his book, The Fiji Mermaid and Other Essays in Natural and Unnatural History. Bonderson states that the Dutch bought the mermaid and sailed all the way to Batavia. Along the way, the boat crashed, the sea captain saving the crew and the items on the ship, hoping to get a reward from the Dutch. One of the items that he saved was the mermaid. The sailor liked the mermaid so much that he bought it off the Dutch in 1822. I personally believe the mermaid and other mermaids were sold to Westerners, or any sailor for that matter, for profit instead of some religious purpose. I also believe the son's story more than Barnum or Bonderson's. But at the end of the day, we will never know the true path the mermaid took. Like mentioned, after its creation, Mermaid was sold to a sea captain. His name was Samuel Barnett Eades. He bought the mermaid for $6,000. In the modern day, that would be $147,421. It was not cheap. It was a lot of money. Money that Eades didn't have. So, to pay for the mermaid, Eades sold the Boston ship he was sailing on, Pickering, and the cargo on board. Eades thought the mermaid was real, so he was willing to pay the price. He then set off to London on a separate vessel. But thankfully, Eades was thoughtful enough to send a letter back to London to the owner of the ship, Stephen Ellery, much to his shock and dismay. Since Eades spent a large sum on the mermaid, he needed some money to finish his voyage to London. He stopped first at Cape Town, South Africa, where he would display the mermaid. It was met with much excitement by the locals. An English missionary even wrote an article about the mermaid, supporting the claim that it was real. After the initial success of the curiosity, Eades arrived in London in 1822, displaying the mermaid at a coffee shop. Here, it was called the Remarkable Stuffed Mermaid. It was reported that around 300 to 400 people came to see the mermaid every day throughout autumn, paying 1 shilling each. After a few weeks of this, Stephen Ellery, the owner of the ship, came to Eades and was like, "Hey, you kind of have to pay me back for the money you embezzled from me." Ellery wanted to take Eades to court, but Eades threatened to leave the country if Ellery did. To prevent this, Ellery exploited a loophole in the court. This is just a simple breakdown of the law. By no means is it a great one, but back in the 1800s, sailors would abduct heiresses to marry them. To prevent this, laws were put into place to allow the parents of the heiresses to appeal the Lord Chancellor's verdict. This made it so that the lady would not be able to marry without the court's consent. So, Ellery was claiming that the mermaid was a hairness and Eades could not move abroad without the court's consent. So, on November 20th, 1822, Ellery appeared in front of the Court of Chancery to state that Eades could not move or sell the mermaid. Mr. Hart, Ellery's solicitor, made a long speech about how the captain deceived the officials about his purchase of the mermaid, and that Mr. Ellery was the true owner of the ship. Funnily enough, this plan actually worked. It was decided that Eades could not get rid of the mermaid without the court's consent or move abroad. Eades was still allowed to keep the mermaid, and Ellery would get a full reimbursement. But this wasn't all. Eades had to work without wages until he paid the debt off. But Eades wasn't done yet. He proclaimed that the mermaid was still a genuine creature. He stated that a well-known naturalist, Sir Everard Home, examined it and said it was real. Eades said that they agreed not to release the findings to the public, only allowing Home to use it in his scientific journals. But what really happened was, when the mermaid was in customs for 7 days after arriving in the country, Holmes sent his assistant, William Clift, to examine the mermaid. On September 21st, Clift arrived at the East Indian baggage warehouse, where the mermaid was held. When Clift examined the mermaid, he could tell instantly that it was a fake. He was an expert anatomist and zoologist. After the examination, Clift wrote a detailed account of his findings to Home, who then later examined it himself. Eades was shocked by this. He hired multiple lesser knowledgeable naturalists, one being named Dr. Reese Prince. Prince was allowed to take the mermaid out of its glass and examine it. Prince didn't see any way that the mermaid was conjoined together. This made Prince come to the conclusion that the mermaid was real. But Eades flew too close to the sun. Eades declared that Sir Everard Home found it to be real. This irritated Home. He got several newspapers to state that the mermaid was a fraud. This was the beginning of the end for Eades. Every newspaper under the sun started to pile on Eades. The newspapers completely destroying his reputation and the mermaids. Eades still displayed the mermaid, but attendance dropped off by January 1823. Adding fuel to the fire, the coffee shop closed down the same month. For several months, Eades showed the mermaid with other curiosities, touring them across England, even exhibiting the mermaid at a few museums and shows, hoping to find new success. But no one really cared anymore. Eades eventually went back to his old job, sailing the seas for 20 years, never being able to pay the debt off like he was going to pay it off. When Eades died, his only possession to his name was the mermaid. Following Eades' death, the mermaid was given to his son, since he was his sole heir. His son, not knowing what to do with the prop, sold it to Moses Kimball in the early 1840s for way less than what his father bought it for. The mermaid was right about its prophecy in a way. It told years of great fertility, followed by years of hardship. It is twisted fate that this is how it worked out for Eades. Kimball then traveled to New York to present the mermaid to P.T. Barnum. Barnum, hesitant about the nature of the mermaid, requested his naturalist's opinion on it. The naturalist actually said he could not see how it was manufactured, saying that he has never seen an ape with such teeth, arms, or hands, and a fish with such fins. But the only reason he didn't believe it was real was because he didn't believe in mermaids, which I think is pretty funny. Anyways, Barnum, seeing great potential in the mermaid, leased it from Kimball for $12.50 a week, which would be around $503 in the modern day. Barnum first wanted to drum up interest in mermaids so that people would come and see his, causing Mermaid Fever. He came up with a plan to promote the mermaid that was quite intelligent. Barnum first sent letters to the local press about a doctor coming to town from Pernambuco, Dr. Griffin of the Lyceum of Natural History in London. Dr. Griffin had a remarkable specimen with him, a preserved mermaid caught around the Fijian Islands. This creature was preserved in China, where a doctor gave it to high figures at the Lyceum of Natural History. Other letters were sent to neighboring cities. One was sent to Charleston, South Carolina. Another one was sent to Washington, D.C., the following day. After this, one of the local papers, published by Empire City newspaper, expressed their desire to see the mermaid before Dr. Griffin took off to London. Dr. Griffin then arrived in the States, slated to stay at a hotel in Philadelphia. I think it's a good time to tell you guys that Dr. Griffin was really Levi Lehman, Barnum's employee, sent to Philly as the doctor. Lehman helped Barnum with previous hoaxes, including the mentioned Joyce Heath hoax. Lehman's social skills, cunningness, and gentle nature was crucial in selling the hoax. Adding to this, the Lyceum of Natural History was made up for the mermaid cover story. Barnum also had a quote-unquote feud with Dr. Griffin. Barnum wanted to display the mermaid as museum, but Griffin was denying that request. Lehman's reputation as Dr. Griffin, the press reaction, and Barnum's behind-the-scene actions grew the excitement to see the mermaid. This excitement escalated when Lehman, as Dr. Griffin, let the landlord of the hotel he was staying at see the mermaid before he left for New York. The landlord was so fascinated by the mermaid, he begged Griffin to show the mermaid to his friends. This includes several editors. Lehman accepted this request, making an appointment for them to see the creature. Articles galore were being made by Philadelphian newspapers days after the viewing. The coverage from the newspapers eventually reached New York, where New York newspapers were then writing stories about the mermaid. This elevated the eagerness to see the creature to an astronomical level, reaching all over the East Coast. 3 other papers were even made in the South, but those were written by Barnum and sent to his friends to publish. Before Lehman's arrival in New York, Barnum sent mermaid woodcuts to 3 local newspapers, saying that he didn't have a use for them since Dr. Griffin didn't want to display the mermaid at his museum. Each newspaper gladly accepted, thinking that they were getting exclusive material for themselves. This was a clever way to promote the mermaid. On Sunday, July 17th, all the newspapers posted the same illustrations of mermaids we see in myth and legend, not the hideous one that Dr. Griffin had. Barnum also distributed 10,000 pamphlets across the city about the mermaid with the same illustrations. Later, in July 1842, Lehman returned to New York, where he stayed at the Pacific Hotel on Greenwich Street. This soon reached the ears of the local reporters, who then spread the news that the mermaid was in town. While Lehman was staying at the hotel, the excitement for the mermaid started to stagnate a bit. When this happened, Barnum sent one of his employees, posing as a Lyceum ambassador, to Court Hall, Broadway, to arrange a public viewing of the mermaid and other exotic animals. Newspapers later announcing the show. The show was from Monday, August 8th, to Sunday, August 13th, 1842. Large crowds showed up to the event, eager to see the mermaid. Lehman sold his part well. He was surrounded by real exotic animals, like an olm, platypus, plus the aforementioned mermaid. Lehman lectured the crowd about his adventures all over the world, new scientific discoveries, and the explanation of the Fiji Mermaid. But this viewing didn't go without any issues. Not from Barnum or Lehman, but from the crowd. The first incident arose when a Dutchman from Jersey came into Barnum's museum, asking where the mermaid was. After being told that it was being displayed a few blocks down, he quickly took off to Court Hall. When the man entered the building, seeing the mermaid for the first time, marched up to Lehman and demanded to see the real mermaid. Upon being told that this was the real mermaid, the Dutchman told Lehman that this is not a mermaid, calling the show the poorest show he's ever seen. The second incident occurred when a man in the crowd started heckling Lehman about the mermaid, stating that he has spent 3 years in Fiji and has never seen a creature like that, but Lehman quickly shut him down. The last incident happened when Lehman was doing one of his shows and left the room for a few minutes. After his departure, young students went up on stage and removed the glass vase that the mermaid was displayed in, putting a lit cigar in its mouth and placing the vase back on the fish. Before Lehman returned, more people entered the room, seeing the mermaid with its new look. Lehman entered back into the room and took stage without noticing the cigar in its mouth. As Lehman went through his speech, You see before you, ladies and gentlemen, the extraordinary mermaid captured at the Fiji Islands. The mermaid has long been deemed a fabulous animal by many persons, including naturalists. But the evidence I pose as an agent of Lyceum of Natural History in London places the fact beyond all reasonable doubt that this identical animal was taken in a fisherman's net at the Fiji Islands. It lived upwards of 3 hours after its capture. Suddenly, one of the gentlemen in the crowd asks, "Was her ladyship smoking the same cigar when she was captured that she is enjoying at present?" Lehman definitely gave a 1,000-yard stare to the vase after hearing that. Anyways, when Lehman retold this story to friends, he said that he was sweating profusely, panicking that the mermaid was ruined, but it was fine in the end. 1 week after the event, the mermaid was displayed at Barnum's American Museum, Dr. Griffin allowing Barnum to use it for a little bit. No extra charge was needed to see the mermaid. This caused the attendance of the museum to triple. After the Joyce Heath hoax, Barnum's reputation took a big hit. That's why Barnum didn't want to display the mermaid at his museum instantly. People would know then immediately that it was a fake, or at least be suspicious of it. Having a fake feud with Dr. Griffin and making him do his own show with the mermaid made the story much more believable. A flag was then hung from the entrance of the museum, 18 feet in length, as an advertisement for the mermaid. Quick side note, Lehman didn't like the flag due to the flag making the mermaid look big in comparison to it only being 3 feet long. Lehman believed that people would be dissatisfied after seeing the real mermaid. Lehman was even willing to fight Barnum over it. Barnum, not wanting to lose Dr. Griffin, removed the flag that night. Barnum was not fully done with the mermaid. He toured it around the rest of the country. Its most famous tour was to the south, where Barnum's uncle, Alanson Taylor, was enlisted in showing the mermaid. But Taylor was not as good as a showman as his nephew. The main issue arose when Taylor went to Charleston, South Carolina, where he found himself in the middle of a dispute between two local newspapers, Charleston Courier and the Charleston Mercury. The editor of the Courier, Richard Yaden, believed that the mermaid was genuine, while a local naturalist, John Bachman, wrote a review of the creature in the Mercury, saying that it is fake, calling it a crude humbug created by our Yankee neighbors. Fearing the worst, Barnum ordered the mermaid to be quietly shipped back to New York, for fear of it being destroyed. The Fiji Mermaid was then finally returned to Kimball. Kimball would display the mermaid in his Boston museum for a bit. It was then shipped back to New York on March 31st, 1855, being displayed on April 1st in Barnum's museum. I think that's the most appropriate date for the creature. It stayed there until January 1st, 1856, when it was sent back to Kimball. From that day, the mermaid was a permanent fixture at Kimball's museum, until a fire broke out at Kimball's museum in 1903. After the fire, it's not really known what happened to it. We do have a Fiji mermaid today in Harvard's Peabody Museum of Archaeology and Ethnology that was recovered from the fire, being donated to the museum by Kimball's heirs. But this mermaid is most likely not the real Fiji mermaid. Is probably one of Kimball's other fake mermaids that he had. Personally, I don't believe we have the original Fiji mermaid. I think the original burned in the fire. The Fiji mermaid that we have in the present looks nothing like what it was described as. The modern Fiji mermaid has a thicker tail, eyes on the side of its head instead of forward-facing eyes, and is positioned belly down, not standing on its tail. The mermaid is almost entirely composed of papier-mâché, besides its arms, fingers, jaw, and teeth. There are no scales or hair on the creature, but they could have been burned off in the fire. The mermaid has fins from some type of spiny ray fish. The arms of the mermaid are made of bird wing bones, while the upper arms are made of the humerus of some type of fowl, while its lower jaw is a combination of two small wolffish jaws. There are 3 nails in the creature, one in the chest, one in the head, and one connecting the shoulder to the spine. A bamboo split holds the two parts of the creature together. The fingers are held together by wire, having possible bird claws on them. So yeah, it doesn't have a great resemblance to the one in the 1800s. Adding to this, the New York Sunday Herald in 1842, the paper that made the original illustration of the mermaid, was reportedly a good representation of it. But it is not known if the artist saw the mermaid beforehand. It is even speculated that Barnum donated the picture to the paper. Now you're probably asking, was it all worth it? Barnum in his autobiography states that in the 4 weeks the mermaid was at his museum, it made $1,272, which doesn't sound like a lot, but in the modern day, that would be around $50,691. While the Court Hall showing made $3,341, which would be around $133,182 in today's money. Now, if we minus the $50 from the 4 weeks, which would be $2,013.49, you would have made $4,563, or $183,751 in total. That is a large sum of money for some old fish thing. That is all I have for you guys today. I think this is such a wild story. The mermaid captured the eyes of the people back then for its otherworldly appearance. Its impact was so big that even in the present, it's still talked about, making people wonder what could really lie below the waves of the ocean. Vinaka Vaka Lavu. Sorry if I butchered that, but thank you guys so much for watching the video. It means so much to me. I appreciate so much that you guys take the time every day to watch my okay content. Once again, thank you guys so much. More. See you guys in the next one.